It's 5:02, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. There are no announcements. We do have a consent agenda. Ladies, were you both at the August 24th? I know it's September 8th. We were all three at, so we can actually pass the consent. Do you have a motion?
Well, I was all out.
You were out on the 24th?
Well, Todd will be here, right?
He will be here. We'll go back to this. Moving on to item 3B on the consent agenda, a resolution authorizing the controller to transfer certain funds. Lisa, what are we moving around?
So just some departmental moves for, like we talked about before, previously budgeted, just kind of re-prioritizing within their budget. So nothing super exciting on this one, if I recall on those.
Any questions for Lisa on this item?
No.
Do you have a motion to recommend for approval?
Motion to approve?
And I'll second.
I have a motion by Cecilia and a second by Jocelyn. You got that one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to resolutions, item 4A, Fisher's Art Municipal Complex Financing, final reading.
So just kind of to walk everybody through this, you guys have seen this a couple of different times. This is now the final time you will see this. So this is the actual final approval for the arts and municipal complex. And so as you'll recall, this is with the Town Hall Building Corp. So you'll see that financing. So there will be a public hearing at City Council, and then there'll be a lease with the Town Hall Building Corp. So this resolution essentially approves execution of the lease and authorizes the actions that we need to complete the financing for City Hall. So.
Okay. Any questions for Lisa on this item? And how many, just for clarity, how many meetings have we had on this particular item? At least?
Multiple.
This is probably the third, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also had a Board of Works agenda item this
So-
week to approve the final
So we have
contract.
3 Budget and Finance Committee meetings and
Yeah.
1 Board of Works meeting, and it's going to go to council, which will have a public hearing on Monday.
Yes, and it's had a public hearing before too.
And so this will be the second public hearing on this particular item that'll occur Monday evening at council, correct? Okay,
Yeah.
just kind of let everybody know
Yeah.
kind of what those opportunities are. Do I have a
Yeah.
motion to recommend for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Jocelyn, second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item B,
All right.
96 Nelsonville Road.
All right, I'm going to talk about B and the, I think it's 5B, 4B and 5B just together. They're related to the 96 and Nelsonville project. I'll just throw them both together. So just as a reminder, these 2 items relate to the project agreement with the 96 and Nelsonville project that was approved at the February 2022 council meeting. So the first item, the resolution, is the creation of the allocation area for this area. So this has been to Redevelopment Commission and Plan Commission, and basically what this step does is allow the increment to be captured in this area. So as you'll see in the ordinance, part of the project agreement is the issuance of bonds, and the increment is going to be used to pay those bonds. And so the resolution allows us to capture the increment, and then the ordinance itself is the item that allows us to issue the bonds. Portion of these, as you guys know, will go to the roundabout at 96th and Nelsonville Road. And right now, these are going to be conduit debt. Essentially, the developer is buying their own bonds on this project.
Okay.
So that, as we talked about a little bit about with conduit debt does show as a disclosure, but is not considered an obligation of the city because the developer has bought their own bonds.
So what you're saying is it's a footnote disclosure in our audited financial, is that what you're saying?
Yes, it shows up, and when you do debt issuances, it shows up, but there's a conduit, just as like a conduit debt schedule.
And and by them buying that bond debt, we have no obligation to pay that debt.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So item B creates the area.
Yeah.
Item 4B creates the area. Item 5B creates the actual financing
Yes.
mechanism.
Yes.
Now, will we be voting on those bonds Monday night? in funding, or is this the first step?
This is the first step on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the resolution is 4B, and that's the definition of the EDA, the Economic
Yeah.
Development Area.
Mm-hmm.
And that does get approved.
Yes, the
Or-
resolution.
or final-
Yeah, you have
the
to have that to do the bond.
Yeah,
Right,
the
right,
resolution,
right.
yeah, the resolution
correct?
can be passed.
We
the re-
established the area through that.
First,
item,
then we create,
Yeah.
And
then we
then the financing piece, we have the
Okay.
first step of the financing
Financing
piece,
piece.
but not the final step.
Got it.
Yeah,
very
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, I'll vote on these on two separate motions, please. I have a motion to approve item 4B.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jocelyn, have a second.
Second.
Second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Skipping down to item 5B, the actual financing to start that process for the bonds. Do I have a motion to recommend for approval on Monday night's council meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Cecilia, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jocelyn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4C, Fisher's Sewer Utility, additional appropriations.
So, yep, so this is just a real, as we've talked a lot about during the budget process, everybody's well aware of our acquisition of Hse Utilities. When we contemplated the 2021 budget and submitted it, we did not factor in either the additional revenue or the additional expense with the combined utility. So what this does is allow us to expend the funds necessary to operate the combined utility and then the debt service piece of it. So as you can see up there, it's really small, but the 22 original budget was a balanced budget with the debt service. This, with all the additional appropriations, includes the debt service and is still a balanced budget with the anticipated revenue. This is on the cash basis, so if you'll go back and you happen to look at a lot of the pro formas that you got from Baker Tilly and when we talked about this acquisition, this is on a cash basis, which is about 10 and a half months of actual cash collections just because of being in arrears. So just if anybody tries to look at that, that's why you'll see that slight difference. So this is for items 1 and 2. And then item C3, this is essentially as acquiring Hse Utility, we ended up taking on these, what I term private, and I don't want to say private inspections, but these sanitary sewer inspections where the developers pay for these inspections. And that's kind of created an increased cost for professional services for the engineering department. So that's what item 3 is, that's that fund. So just kind of a quick, kind of down and dirty look at the combined sewer
So
utility.
the item 3 is almost like an enterprise fund, because
Yeah.
we don't know how many projects private developers are gonna bring forward in a given year that are gonna require inspections, but we charge revenue to meet the inspection cost, so it's kind of money in, money out. So we now have a better understanding of what will be required to get to the end of the year, but every year it's gonna act more like a business where it just depends on how many customers we have, and then it's gonna
Much.
cost, but it should be revenue and expenditure neutral for the most part.
Yeah.
Any questions for Lisa on this particular item?
No.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 4C1?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Jocelyn, I have a second.
Second.
Second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Budget passes. Item 4C II, R091922D. Have a motion to recommend approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jocelyn, have a second.
Second.
Second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the last item 3, R091922E. Do I have a motion to recommend for approval at the council meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jocelyn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Todd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're going to step back up to consent agenda. Were you at the August 24th meeting? I want to get these off our list.
Do what?
Were you at the August 24th Budget and Finance Committee meeting?
Yes.
Was I there?
Yes,
Yes, you were at the.
Physically and mentally both.
There's some days I don't know where I'm at, John.
Okay, so I do
According to
have,
minutes, he was
I do
there.
have-
I was there, okay.
do a motion to approve the minutes for August
I'll make a
24th.
motion.
Motion by Todd, a second.
Oh, yeah.
Second.
I'm trusting all of you that you know where I was at.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And one abstention, I was not there.
September 8th,
That's why we couldn't pass it until you arrived.
September 8th, you were not here. but we were.
Yes.
So do I have a motion to approve September 8th minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jocelyn, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Cecile, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Thank you, Todd.
Yes. Sorry, John.
Moving on to item 5AI, 2023 municipal budget.
Yeah, so I'll cover this briefly. Just 3 or 4 slides here. One, I want to start with where we've been, where we're at today, and where we're going, right? And so the checks are all the public finance committee meetings we've had to discuss and contemplate the 2023 budget. We started at that real high level of revenue, covered that in detail. Then we stepped down and talked about expenses at a high level, right? And then we brought in department heads and talked about their departmental budgets from operational, personnel, and capital. And I appreciate all the participation in all those meetings. So we have tonight's opportunity to talk about the budget again if you so wish, and then we'll bring it for first reading based on a recommendation for September 19th. If you go to the next slide real quick, though, I do want to acknowledge some considerations and comments that came about throughout this process. And this is just a whole lot of words, and I apologize for that. But we did talk about the other day adding $50,000 to the nonprofit committee to bring it up to $300,000. And one hope to find some closure today in this group. Our recommendation is to keep it at $250,000. I didn't hear full consensus across the board. That being said, after this budget is approved, if the nonprofit committee so chooses to have $300,000 to distribute, we can bring an additional appropriation back through this finance committee to add $50,000 to that. So if that's tenable to the folks today, then we'll continue to contemplate $250,000 in the budget we're talking about on September 19th, knowing that $50,000 additional dollars can be brought forward later. The second one is the domestic violence shelter for Hamilton County. As the mayor, I think, talked about in that meeting last week, the facility is not yet constructed, and so we're recommending holding off on that idea of an additional $250,000 for operational use.
And this was just to add some color.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with the county commissioners about this, and they haven't moved forward with construction, and they want to do an RFP for operations. And Councilmember Dreamer happened to be at the Ribbon County for State Road 37 when we talked about this, and they said that they would have no likelihood of opening in 2023, but in 2024 they would be open for more of a discussion on that front. So it's not a no, we don't support the domestic violence shelter, but rather a timing issue where we can revisit this once they've identified an operator, the scope of services, all of that type of thing, and they open up in 2024, more than likely. I think they're just going to start potentially tearing down buildings where they might be building later this fall or early this winter. So, and as far as I know, no other community yet has been contacted on it either when I talked to the other mayors.
But we'll keep our eyes and ears out for that, and when it's appropriate, we'll bring the executive director forward for a finance committee discussion to
Right.
talk about their operational pro forma and how they intend to fund it, and we'll bring that to this group for a discussion based on, I think, Jocelyn, your request at the last meeting.
Well, I would think it would make more sense for, once this facility has a direction, and we can all come together, all the communities come together as one to decide how we're going to be a part of that financial. I'd rather do it and be impactful rather than do it piecemeal in other communities. So I think waiting, see how things kind of develop and see how the commissioners move forward with things makes the most sense, at least my opinion.
I totally agree with that, and I'll chime in here because this was something that I was advocating for the last time we met. I appreciate knowing what the timing is, and I think frankly it slowed down from when it was initially jump started recently. I think we can all agree that it is already past due. So I think we're all eager, but I think timing's the right thing. So I totally am supportive of deferring any municipal devotion of funds for the operation of a facility until it's closer to the facility actually being operational. That makes sense to me. I will link these two bullets together, if I may, and for final, I think, maybe decision on this. Right now, and as far as I know, for the extended past, the municipality hasn't supported Prevail financially in any way. And whether or not they have a facility open and constructed or not, they are still providing services to Fisher's residents today. With that being said, I would like to link up to the top bullet and say if we can agree today on a $300,000 budget for the nonprofit committee, prevail and their consideration of supporting them in calendar year 2023 or 2023 with that $30,000, that helps us give a little bit more wiggle room and to include them if we determine that be necessary. So to sum up, because I'm all over the place, I would recommend a $300,000 budget for the nonprofit committee, but with no further allocation to prevail at this time.
I think one thing too that we would request as a staff is that council have a discussion before the end of the year about how you want to approach nonprofits moving forward.
Yes.
You know, so that we don't get into the same situation we had this year where things kept getting delayed or kicked down the road about how council wants to approach that and what the appetite for that is. And so, you know,
I agree.
they need to go in parallel here somehow where that
Yeah,
conversation's being had
With-
at a work session or something.
Absolutely, with the umbrella of we're trying to be responsible
Right.
and do the best work we can here
How
with
do
these
the
funds.
so how do the other municipalities in our county handle nonprofit? Do they have nonprofit committees? Do we even know that?
We can find out.
Yeah, so some do use the Hamilton County Community Foundation. Some do. I think Noblesville does.
Noblesville does, yeah.
I believe Carmel has a separate process and committee that's just within the municipal. I don't know.
Like
I think the
staff or
finance.
something, or-
Yeah, I believe so. But I do believe, and I could be wrong on this, Carmel's process includes not only just staff members but community members
Could
or
be.
something, right? It's I think a rigorous and methodical process that I think we've struggled with.
And I also,
So,
I think for the work session, you guys should have a general conversation, even philosophically.
Yes.
Because I think there's people all over the continuum on the council from, hey, I don't think we should be giving money to nonprofits, to here's who
Yeah.
we should be giving money to. And I just think there needs to be a discussion, you know, about how you guys want to go about approaching that moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to have a discussion because, you know, I've sat on a nonprofit board. I've watched how that plays out, good and bad, right? Because what happened, it's great. There's a lot of great things. And and I'm not speaking even toward Prevail, I'm just saying in general, just
Correct.
everything in general. There are a lot of good things out there, but I can tell you that I struggled getting, and the board that I was on struggled getting our executive director to go get sponsorships because of reliance on municipal funds saying, well, that check's coming. You don't know that. Then the assumptions were there that the checks are coming from municipalities. And so I think we need to really have a holistic talk about all of that because and then it gets political, right? Inevitably, inevitably those things start coming out, and it shouldn't be. It should be just, hey, we're trying to do something good for the community, but then somebody else feels slighted, and there's always somebody that feels slighted, no matter what we do, even with the best intentions from everybody. And so I just think we just need to be real careful going forward because we're going to get bogged down. And
So
I agree, and I haven't had a chance to say anything. I really do feel that we need to, as a body, city council body, we need to kind of evaluate moving forward. And as I've been kind of looking at this, I really think that we need to look at it by a year-to-year basis of where are our priorities as a city. Are there initiatives? Are there needs within whatever we happen to be focusing on that year that need priorities that we should allocate dollars to so that the money stays closer to our community and really is impactful.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I would really like to have a conversation in terms of a public policy standpoint or kind of how we, the people or the council want to, you know, move forward that's best suited for our community. I mean, every community is different in what their philosophy and their goals, but I think we now that we're close to almost 100,000 people, we've got a lot of priorities and needs within our own city that we need to try to champion and support.
I agree.
so work session.
Work session, right? It's the appropriate
Yeah,
home for that?
Yeah, I agree.
You know, my thoughts is keeping things where we are at 250. If we have a work session, we have some discussion about it, there's no reason why we couldn't appropriate more down the road if we so chose. If we felt as a body that we wanted to go a different direction, we could do more, but I want to kind of keep it where we are right now. That's just I'm one vote here.
Well,
So, and
keep in mind too, like the budget, I'm presenting what I think the budget should be from a proposal to you, to the full council. We go through it at the finance committee so that you guys have a full and deep an understanding of it. But ultimately, you guys at the council meeting, either in October or beyond, can adjust it however you see fit.
Yeah.
So like the adjustments here, I can take your feedback here. I still have to filter what I want to present to the full council, and then you guys can adjust it $50,000 up or down if you so choose.
yeah, absolutely.
So-
I think it's something, having a conversation, seeing where we go with that. Maybe we look at appropriating more, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
and go from there. But I think it's a good idea to have a really good discussion as a body to determine what we want to do.
That's fine. And if I can make one final comment about Prevail, I think one of the things that hit home for me the last time we met was Prevail's services are public safety. And Chief Gephardt brought that point home, and I just want to be sure that when we consider nonprofits such as this, that's in the spirit of public safety, and I think that's the appropriate kind of perception of it.
And I think,
That's all.
I think to Cecilia's point, I think it was a good one earlier, is that if, let's say, public safety is a priority, then telling the nonprofit committee, hey, Cherish and Prevail, that's where the excess funds should go, that might be the alignment we're talking about versus, hey, everyone just submit,
And then we'll
figure it out. Maybe there's a communication that says, hey, our priority right now are these two pillars,
Right.
public safety and X. And that tends to send a message to the community, hey, if you want funds, you have to be in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish. So
Yeah.
that
That
could
sounds
be,
very responsible.
Gives
So
gives
clear
our opportunity to be
update.
very thoughtful about it and very specific, so I like that.
Good.
private roads, Elliot.
Yeah, so this one, just by way of an update. So yesterday, our engineering department took to the Board of Works a map for approval of criteria for existing commercial and residential roads not currently in our inventory to be accepted into our inventory. So that's kind of the what, and then now we're working on the how, right? And so that may be a fairly generic update, but want to tell you about that today, and then we'll bring, when we have the how squared away, we'll bring that back in a work session to discuss how the city intends to determine whether or not we bring those residential and commercial roads into our inventory. And it's more, I do think from a financial standpoint, it's a cash flow scenario, right? So whether we take the last 3 years of what it would cost to bring that road up to par for a city road, and they pay it back over a period of 30 years, things of that nature. So we'll talk through those financial components when we figure out how we want to go about the how.
So I think we are in the process of bringing a couple of these roads through the Barrett process right now. We can give you an update on that. But I think really the policy conversation that we need to have at the work session and what we had at Board of Works, because I think it's important for you guys to know for constituents' sake, we've been hit up by a number of neighborhoods. They're townhome developments or apartment developments that are saying, hey, take over our roads as well. And so Board of Works spent some time discussing what do we really view as a road that would be truly eligible for being a public road versus there's really no justification for why this road would be viewed as public. We passed that policy at the Board of Works, and I think we probably owe a work session to just kind of update everyone on what that policy looks like, because constituents will reach out from time to time that live in an apartment complex and say, hey, our roads are looking kind of bad between these garages. Will you guys take them over? And Jason and the engineering team spent a lot of time really thinking through, well, what's a legitimate road that acts like a public road and what's not? So we'll bring that to a work session as well.
Can we also still receive, I'm still curious about how it's going so far and what roads have
Yes.
been
We can have Jordan provide an
approached,
update.
and yeah, I would like that. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get that out in an email.
Yep.
Thank you.
And the next slide, this really just closes out the 2023 budget. Want to kind of foot stamp the mayor's priorities that we brought forward to this committee. Number one, First and foremost being a decrease for the second consecutive year of our property tax rate, getting us back to that 2020 rate that we had. Continued investment in quality of life amenities, most notably the Geist Waterfront Park, the personnel required to bring that to bear for our community. And then continued significant investment in local road infrastructure. We've talked about that in multiple meetings. And finally, an increase in our cash reserve balance. And so, pending any further questions, look for a recommendation to bring this forward September 19th for a city council meeting.
One question, it came up last night at the Fisher's Arts and Culture Commission, what the was recommended for appropriating the Fisher's Arts and Culture Commission for 2023?
Yep, so in 2022, that amount was $50,000. In the budget that we have before you, we've increased it by $10,000 to $60,000. Then additionally, the neighborhood vibrancy matching grant program was at $75,000 for 2022. This budget has that up $25,000 to $100,000.
There's also funding available in our Town Hall Building Corp from the sale of Meyer Najum. Do you remember we did those microloans to all those businesses during COVID? The majority of those have paid that back already. And so those funds are sitting there. And I really think the arts community, we used half of that for art, if you remember previously. Right. I think there's a good opportunity to have the Arts Commission work on the possibility of additional projects. That money's just sitting there as almost a capital amount that would be available if the Arts Commission came up with some ideas. Right now, they're pretty busy with the murals and all that other stuff, but long term, we think there's revenue stream there for additional art projects. But we did increase the operational budget per Megan Vukasic's recommendation.
That's good. The two comments, if I may. One last comment about grant funding. I will say, and I think Cecilia would agree, we both are members of the Fisher's Arts and Culture Commission. Their methodology for granting and reviewing and those parameters and judging and finalists is so just best practice. It is formed by looking at other communities' best practices, and this structure that we have is just airtight. It is just airtight, and I'm very proud of that because I think what you see out in the community are output of that. If we can develop something just as strong for nonprofit grants moving forward, we're on to something. So I just want to say, we know how to do this. We just need to figure out the model for nonprofit grants. We can do this. The second comment I would have overall about the 2023 budget is I'm still a little uncomfortable about the cash reserve balance. I still feel like it's large, but although I appreciated, Elliot, the memo that you provided us of priorities for that, it's a great start, and I think you presented it as a good start. I do think it would be wise as we move forward, even outside of the budget conversation, to just try to pinpoint a little bit better what those funds are being used for, with dollar amounts assessed to it, or frankly, we just talked about, hey, we could pull something from the cash reserve. I don't think that's how we want to move forward, just right. And I think some sort of policy, or at least strategy is a better word, that the city council and the administration are all connected on for that cash reserve, I know for me would make me feel a lot more comfortable because it would feel more strategic and responsible.
Yeah. I think it's a valid point, and I think what we're talking about is really the continuum, right? So right now there isn't a dire need for it this minute, so our long-range strategy are kind of these big nebulous buckets. As we get closer to those projects coming into fruition, we can get into more specificity with this body to say, okay, now we have a better idea of what this specifically means. So I envision that as a starting point of a conversation, but to your point, throughout the coming years, we would refine that and be able to speak specifically to each one of those opportunities as they arose.
Yes, and I think we're all enjoy that document is big picture amenity, good stuff. I think we can all agree that we want to be sure that if there are needs that is not amenities, but real needs that we're having a shortfall on for whatever reason, that there's supply there that we can evaluate and make a good choice right there.
Absolutely.
So
agreed.
I think we're all agreed on that, so, thank you, those are my last two comments there.
Well, we're certainly envy of many communities around us, so we can even have a discussion about the excess reserves that we have, so we should feel really good about where we're at from a financial perspective. I'd like to have a motion to recommend to have first reading Monday Night Council. I have a motion by Todd, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Cecile, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We'll move forward to Monday night's council meeting, have our first reading. Thank you very much, good job, Elliot.
And public hearing is at that
Public hearing is
presentation,
over there.
right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Our salary ordinance will also be on the
Yeah.
agenda
Oh,
for
sure.
the meeting.
Moving on to agenda, we've already taken care of 5A, B.
Yeah.
Moving on to 091922A.
Yep, so we're on kind of to what I'd term the economic development section, so I think
Yeah.
the Andretti piece feeds
What-
into a bigger
Right.
discussion on
So-
this, so I'll,
Obviously, a busy morning here at City Hall, or the substitute for City Hall, I guess.
Wow,
Yeah.
thank you.
Tonight is merely an introduction of one of these projects. The other two are actual economic development agreements that are on the agenda. So I want to talk through these with you guys tonight. And then really Monday night is really where we delve into more of this, but it lined up where it would be hard to have a finance committee meeting tonight and not talk about the announcement today, even though we're having kind of the introduction of these projects on Monday night. So we're gonna walk you through what you've just been handed and talk through these projects, answer some questions, but I will tell you the vast majority, I mean, one of these, we're just literally starting the journey. The other two, we're bringing to a close, which we've been talking about for some time. So we'll talk about the first two that are really, should not be new news to you guys in terms of these projects. We've talked about them in executive session and have had announcements on both of them. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Overall, what we proposed this morning was $1.1 billion in investment to our community. That's a culmination of really three projects. Stefan, Andretti, which we announced that recently, and then the next phase of the yard. So let's go ahead and move on to the Stefan group. So if you guys remember, it was some time ago when we had our groundbreaking big announcement economic development agreement with Stefan, and the original intent there was about a $140 million project. At that time, or shortly after that, we started having conversations with Stefan about moving forward and actually doing a larger project in one fell swoop, whereas before it was going to be a phased approach. So we quickly got on a plane, went to Italy, believe it or not, because they couldn't travel here. It was during COVID. Spent about 48 hours with them and started working out a deal to expand from 140 million to something larger. We weren't sure exactly what that number was going to be. In the following months, almost a year now, we've been waiting for them to refine what the total number was going to be, what the total investment would be. And we were excited to find out that they were moving from 140 million to $512 million. That's a massive increase in the amount of investment they're making. It also increased their job numbers, almost doubled their job numbers here in our community. Financially, and in the economic development agreement, we were able to renegotiate the abatements so that it was advantageous to us. So with this new investment, we will actually be $5 million ahead of where we would need to be for our debt obligations for the land that we purchased and the infrastructure that we put out there. And that's not including the 8 acres that we have yet to develop. So by approving this project on Monday night, we would ensure, one, that we would have the funds necessary to cover all of our debt obligations for the investment that we made in the 70-acre life sciences park, but also would be to the good of about $5 million over the life of that debt. And that still leaves 8 acres for us to go market and try to develop another life science company. So we view this as frankly, a really big win, and happy to answer any questions you guys might have about Stefan. The other thing that we've been doing lately, because I think it helps with this narrative at times about what's the implication on schools. There's a lot of old language that came from pre-2008 that I won't bore people with. Giffel likes it, but nobody else really gets into this. But pre-2008,
I like it too, Daily.
yeah, prior to 2008, the schools had a real point about if you use TIF, it takes away from the school system. since 2008, the property tax reforms, it's really changed. And because of the fact that our school system actually has an operating referendum, that operating referendum, that tax rate flows through all of our TIFs. So if we go do a big economic development deal and something big gets built, they get to collect the taxes off of that. And that's real operating dollars to them as soon as that property is assessed. So one of the things that we've tried to do is demonstrate what is the financial implication to the schools. So for this particular project, because we're abating it, it's slightly less than what you might think given the investment, but it is still on an annual basis, $211,000 of additional revenue to the school system because of this investment.
So we get 2 teacher salaries. That's just the assumption of the average salary plus a full family plan for health benefits at $100,000. That's where you capture the 2 teacher salaries as an example of what they could use it for, not suggesting that they would necessarily go straight to teachers, but as a concrete example.
Can I just ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question here? So that dollar amount, and I appreciate you breaking this out and having thoughtfulness about the school district, that is the revenue that they collect from the referendum.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the real amount is that part they don't collect on a project like this.
They, the rest of it is their rates aren't fixed; they float. So they still get to collect the amount that the state would allow them to collect.
They still
If that
get
makes
their
sense.
base, yes.
Yeah.
So if the land was $100,000, they still get, they're not adversely impacted. They still got what they got before, plus the referendum.
Right.
So they're getting a double benefit. They just don't get the next
Correct.
piece of it.
The only argument anyone can make that the schools are harmed if it's the but-for test. If you were
Sure.
to believe that this were to happen without any incentives, then the schools could argue, well, if you just let it happen, then this gets really wonky. The assessed value would go up, therefore the tax rate would slightly decrease, and therefore they would have less of an impact on their circuit breaker. I could shoot holes in that. One, I don't think Stefan ends up here if we don't incentivize it. 2, it's not a big enough project, believe it or not, to move the needle on our $8 billion or $9 billion of assessed value that would actually have a tax rate implication that would then alleviate the circuit breaker. So again, a lot of that language is from like back in the day when TIF meant you
Yeah.
just took all the school's operating money,
Right.
which was legitimately what did occur prior to 08.
Well, and frankly, the context for my question is the referendum will have to be on the ballot for renewal next year.
Yes.
And so as we, as city councilors, review this, like, if that referendum goes away,
They lose that money.
that revenue goes away.
Correct.
And it is that what I think we need to do a good job communicating to our
It's a good
community
reminder.
about.
Absolutely.
So I'm really glad to see you break it out like that. I think
It
that's
took us
helpful.
a decade to figure out to do that, but
It's
I'm glad we're doing it
complicated.
now.
Yeah, it's good.
So there's nothing.
No, next slide, I think the mayor already kind of
Yeah.
covered down on these items as far as the abatement goes.
Now, one point that was brought up, I think by Councilmember Dreamer about impact fees. The reason we waived road impact fees in this particular project is Stefan committed to build all the internal roads in this development. So if you think about that South Korean firm that we had come in and they're going to invest and build, they're using that internal road in order to build their development. And so we said, well, Stefan, if you're willing to build all the internal roads that allows for all this other development to occur, we'll waive your road impact fees. So I just want to explain kind of why the waiver of impact fees is in this project.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Does the state limit where we can spend the road impact fees?
Yes.
And that's only on new projects?
Yes.
Right.
Only
Increased-
on new projects?
Only on increased capacity
For all of our impact fees.
for all of our,
Yeah.
So
parks,
not
roads,
maintenance at
sewer.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Right.
can't repave a road.
How much are the impact fees that are waived? What's the dollar amount?
This one was
I can find it for you.
700,000 perhaps. I have
How much are
Elliot
the
check.
roads gonna cost?
They're spending more money on roads than we're waiving, I can tell you that much.
So we're getting a value for that.
Correct, and it's unlocking other development. I mean, we were able to get List Bio to locate there, and the 8 acres are now accessible. You know, we're marketing that now as shovel-ready. Like, you could literally just go build on the 8 acres, and the road access, stormwater infrastructure, sewer infrastructure is all there.
And then those become public roads,
Uh-huh. Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we don't actually have this is not a one to vote on in the finance committee, is
Correct.
it?
No, because this bond
is
has
just-
already
We've
been
already
issued.
done
This is just an
Yeah.
update.
Yeah, this is just an update.
We have one additional slide, which we'll show for all three projects, and this is just relating it back to the 2040 comprehensive plan, right? So we have that plan, we should probably use it, right? And so granted, shovels have already been in the ground, they're still vertical, so the building is already there. But this just shows you the land use designation in the 2040 comprehensive plan and Stefanato's proposed use. There's some sub-bullets there that I think directly align with flex employment and research and development type uses for that land. We'll show that again for the next two projects as well. But it's a good reminder of what we've committed to already in our 2040 comprehensive plan.
Okay, moving on to Andretti. This is one's been well publicized already, but it is on your council agenda on Monday night. Marissa Andretti will be in attendance to share their vision for this project. But we've talked about this. It's $200 million. It's their global headquarters. It's approximately 500 jobs that are willing to commit to at this point. Average salary $100,000, so good paying jobs. That will change if Formula One comes. That they anticipate those numbers to go up. What we had decided to do in regard to this project, if you want to go to the next slide. Again, going back, I guess, to the format here.
Yeah.
If you break this down, and this just shows you, not to walk out here, but the previous one where you had such a significant investment of $500 million, you might ask yourself, why did they only generate $211,000 for teachers and schools, where this project's $200 million and generates $245,000? It's because we granted an abatement to Stefanato. For this project, all we're offering is a TIF. We're capturing the increment, so there's no abatement. That's why they're generating more for the school. So approximately 2.45 teachers, so to speak, $245,000 would be generated for our school system. This is a very simple economic development project from our standpoint. It's a 100% TIF capture of the airport property. And if you size that bond, the current estimated bond would be $20 million. They are buying their own bonds. So again, this is a low risk scenario for the city. We are waiving the fees because they, again, are willing to build the internal road system. So if you go back one, sorry, Lisa, you see that road that's getting built all the way into the site, and then the one down to 96th Street, they're building those roads. Well, what that means for us then is the next tenant that comes along that wants to go build out there, they have that advantage already built in. So that's the reason behind the waiver of road impact fees or impact fees in this particular case.
Yeah, and so you
And then
guys,
we're, yeah, sorry.
you guys have the bond, the first reading of the bond ordinance for this council meeting, and then the order will be, I think the project agreement for Andretti will go, and then we'll follow it up with the bond ordinance.
Yeah.
And then similar to what we did on 96 in Nelsonville, we will come back to you probably next month with the creation of the new allocation area.
And one final note on this, the sewer construction to the site. As we were contemplating the acquisition of Hse Utilities, in the bond issuance that we did during that time period, we were contemplating investing in certain sewer infrastructure that would unlock users and unlock economic development. This was one of those locations. So we're not asking you for additional funds to go build the sewer line out to the airport. We've already accounted for that. We have that in our bond proceeds. So those designs are underway currently, and look forward to building that as soon as possible.
It's been very similar, these bonds, they will own them. It will not,
Yes.
it'll just be a conduit debt.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. So this one, I guess, we would ask, since there's a financial agenda item,
Yeah.
to vote this out of committee and to the council for Monday night.
Start the
Do I
bond
have a motion
process.
to recommend moving out to council?
Motion approved.
Motion by Todd, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Cecilia, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you.
Can I, very quickly,
Yeah.
can you go back one slide, I think one slide, please? Yes, here. And please bear with me because I just feel like I want to be sure that our discussion that involves the topic of HSE schools is
Yes.
precise. I'm not sure if the equation there to two equals two teacher salaries is, accurate? Or
We asked
could
Mike Reuter,
Their previous
their
CFO, and he
financial
said to use
consultant, to use
$100,000.
100,000.
So a new hire versus a tenured high school teacher, he said average it out, and then you add in a full family health plan, he said use $100,000.
Well, and I assume that it included benefits. I'll just leave it at this. I think that could be misconstrued in a really weird way.
Okay.
Meaning like, oh, our teachers are making $130,000 salary.
yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
Like
yeah,
it kind of
yeah.
reads that way, and I just
Salaries
want
and
to.
benefits or something.
Yeah,
along
and-
those
I think it's, or I don't know if it put the word average in there, like average.
Average
teacher-
total compensation.
Average
of-
total compensation or something like that.
I just don't want that to be
No, that's a
misinterpreted.
fair
Yep.
point.
Yeah, I think average, since that's what we're kind of using, is
And benefits, whatever.
Yep.
You
Good
hear
point.
me? Thank you.
All right, so now the one that probably caused the most stir today in the city of Fishers. The next phase of the Fishers district. Forgive me if I call it the yard. When we originally started doing this project, it was called the yard, then they had a trademark infringement, now it's called the district. But I will always continue to call it the yard. So this has got a lot of moving pieces, and tonight really, out of courtesy for the fact that we're at the finance committee, we're going to talk about it, but we've got a long road ahead in terms of introductions and discussions with people. But I did want to get this in front of you since we did announce it this morning. Ultimately, this is nearly $500 million or more of investment contemplated, but it's really, we're talking about 3 different neighborhoods here, so I kind of want to break it into different components, but understand this is part of an overall master plan to really finish out from south of the hotel there all the way around to the Navian building. And I want to paint a picture here too that we think this is a really unique opportunity and provides a lot of economic development opportunity for us. You'll see in the back of your packet, I'll just bring this up and highlight this, there's actually a letter of support from the new owners of the Navian building. Some people may not be aware of this, but there's 300,000 square feet of empty office space in the Navian building right now. That building is massive. And when the new buyers bought it, we sat down and said, well, what do you need? Like, what is it going to take to reposition that building to be successful? And the first thing that they told us was, we need walkability, we need density. We feel like we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, even though I know they're not. But when you stand out there in that parking lot, you very much feel like there's nothing else around you. And so as we started talking to them about this development, they were eager to see this be announced because they really do believe it provides a competitive opportunity for them to bring more companies in this area to fill up those office buildings. So in totality, you have kind of a master plan development that includes hotels, 70,000 square feet of additional office, mixed-use developments, and then a lot of kind of one-off retail developments. You can go to the next slide. This really gives you kind of a great example of what the overall master plan is. And at Monday night's meeting, we'll have Megan Vukovic talk a lot about the site plan for the PUD conversation. Megan Baumgartner will be able to really walk you through a lot of this. We're at a finance committee meeting, so I'm not going to get real into the vision piece of this, other than to say this is kind of the overall development of the project. Next slide, please. This gives you, go back one. This gives you a better idea as we talk about this event center and development down by the yard. One of the things that I was really excited to see, and we spent a lot of time talking about, was making sure that we would be good neighbors. And so if you look at this site plan as the residential development around there, one of the things that we wanted to do is put the retention pond near the homes to create a buffer. And then we put a lot of green space on the south end. And then David, I know you're going to bring this up. There's no road that goes through the neighborhood. So if you recall, that roundabout has like a spoke that was originally always intended to go through the neighborhood to the south. That is not proposed in this development. So there would be no traffic going through the neighborhood to the south of this. It's actually a 50-foot berm with a 10-foot tall or 8-foot tall and I think a 8-foot fence, if I recall correctly.
Correct.
Next slide. This gives you more of an overview, kind of an aerial, if you would, of what the renderings would look like. So if I could orientate you, this is the yard as we know it today. This section of it is called the Union, and this would have more of what we've seen with the yard, mixed-use development, an office and a hotel development, along with retail on the first floor. It's compact, there's parking garages. We're really trying to create a walkable environment that integrates nicely into the current yard as we know it today, and then the future slate development that's currently under construction right now. If you drive by the forum right now, look behind it, you're gonna see all those kind of villas, if you will, the for rent product that's been being built as we speak. And then off in the distance, you can obviously see what we're calling the commons at the moment, which is the event center along with the mixed-use development. Next slide. This gives you a better aerial of what the proposed architecture and vision of this area would be. I think it's important to note as we talk about the arena that this facility is not Lucas Oil Stadium. The goal here was really to have it blend in architecturally with the rest of the area. And the size of this particular project, for a normal hockey game or for a basketball game, for an HSC basketball game, you're talking about 6,500 people would be able to be seated. If you're talking about a concert, depending upon the configuration, you could have up to 8,000 people in the facility. The building itself is roughly the same size as the yard today. So if you were to go by it and stand by the yard where the mixed-use development is, that's about the size of what that facility will feel like when it's built. Next slide, please. One of the things that was really important as we discussed this over the last several months with the developer and with the overall development team is that we wanted the architecture to really fit in with the yard. We wanted it to feel like you're really part of one development. And so as you can see here, the facility is kind of a little higher end architecture than what you would think of for a normal arena. Next slide. Ellie, do you want to talk a little bit about the interior of the facility and what we're envisioning here?
Yeah, so it is intended to be a mid-sized but world-class event center with a variety of options. And so we want to make sure when you go and buy a ticket to this location, you buy seat C17, for example, you're not just going to go sit in C17. It's intended to be the interior place for a variety of experiences to occur all at the exact same time. So whether you're in a business meeting and hosting folks, you're taking your family, you're out on a date night, what have you, there are a lot of different options that can occur in this building, whether it's a hockey game or it's a concert or it's a convention or a number of other events that take place in here. And so the mayor mentioned it in hockey mode, if you will. There's about 6,500 spots available, 6,000 seats and 500 options, be it suites. You can see to the right a rendering of some standing room only type opportunities. And so then you move it over to a concert venue, and it's between 8 and 8,500 seats, depending on where they put the actual stage. If it's a center stage, it gets up to about 8,500. If it's an in stage, it's about 8,000 seats. So it's highly configurable. The consultants when we were helping design this, there's upwards of like 45 or 50 different types of events that can occur in this facility. So it is not just a hockey rink or an arena. It is truly an event center.
Nelsonville corridor.
Busy night.
Sorry.
Yep. Good luck.
That's more important.
I understand. See you.
See you, David.
Next slide. This is just an idea of all the folks that have been working on this project prior to tonight, did not just live in the mayor or my head. So Thompson Thrift, obviously those are the folks that brought you the first phase of the district. You're well familiar with those guys. BBB SEI, so Murray Benyon is a first-class architect. They've done a variety of these types of buildings. They did the $5 billion refurbishment of Madison Square Gardens, the new New York Islanders NHL Stadium. So they've done a variety of these types of things. AECOM Hunt is actually a local Indianapolis firm that has done over 179 events, arenas, and stadiums across the country. That bottom right, it's pretty small, but that's all the different logos of facilities from college up to professional athletic programs.
If you're interested in a similar project, they just finished up one in Savannah, Georgia, that apparently is very similar to this type of
In size and scale, yeah, absolutely. Hallett Sports Entertainment, we'll talk a little bit more about those guys. And OVG is a world-class event management consulting firm. And so in the back of your guys' packets, there is a pro forma that they've helped Hallett Sports Entertainment put together that talks about kind of the operational revenue projections for the first several years of putting this facility out there. So next slide. So I guess I'll start by saying this will be very similar to the city hall structure, right? So there's the town hall building core. And what we have here is the operator will be Hallett Sports Entertainment. So we'll have an agreement, an operator's agreement that we're working on with that organization. Right now we're contemplating 20 years with 2 additional 5-year options, but that's still being worked out. And then a separate lease agreement with the Indy Fuel. So Hallett Sports Entertainment is the owner of the Indy Fuel. It'll be a separate lease. They'll be the anchor tenant with inside of this facility. The Indy Fuel is an ECHL hockey team that's kind of like AA for you baseball fans out there. They play about 34 to 36 home games a year. So in year one operation, we're looking between 100 to 125 to 150 events, and so roughly a quarter of those events would be ECHL, semi-professional hockey, and the rest would be concerts and a variety of other events that would take place in a year, to include, I think to the mayor's point, an opportunity to host truly community events, right? I grew up here, I graduated in 2001, and I walked across the stage in Noblesville. No one, to my knowledge, at HSE before my time has actually graduated in their own hometown. And so Fisher's and HSE kids to walk across what's going to be a really awesome stage, with unlimited capacity, so you're not saying, hey, grandma, I like you more than grandpa, so you can come, or we're limited on seats. You can bring the entire family and watch
I was actually
walk across the stage.
Did an interview today with a reporter who wasn't from around here, and she asked me, she's like, well, what's the largest venue you have today in Fisher's for events outside of the schools? And I was like, the Forum, and she's like, well, is that 5,000, 6,000? I'm like, 400 maybe? I don't know.
400 crowded.
400 crowded. And she was just like completely shocked that a community our size we don't have a facility. So it was just interesting to hear an outsider's perspective on that.
And we've never been able to host sectionals or regionals.
No.
No.
Or prom, or
Prom.
a variety of it.
There's just all sorts of things, like graduation. My son graduated at
Or,
downtown,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so I
so
don't
that's
know
where
if
we go.
you guys went to the Mudsock football game the other night, but it was packed, right?
Mhm.
And this is Indiana, and we do basketball. So to
Right.
have the Mudsock basketball game in a massive arena here,
Yeah.
mid-size, but big for high school basketball, would just be an incredible opportunity for our community. And that's not financially related, but I got pretty excited about it. So next slide.
You're a homer.
I'm a homer. I'm a homer. So this is similar to what we've talked about with both Stefanato and Andretti, and would result ultimately in 4.6 for total compensation worth of teachers to the schools, and $2.5 million for annual taxes.
It was actually interesting. I sent an email this morning to Dr. Stokes, kind of highlighting that at the end of the day, if these projects were approved, it'd be almost $1 million annually to the school system for revenue, and at the same time create a place where their kids can graduate and do all these other things. So it's a fun story to tell the school system. It was warmly received.
Okay, next slide.
How are we going to pay for it, right? That's the $1 million question, so let's talk about that. One of our goals early on, from Ellie and I's perspective, is we didn't want to raise property tax rates on our residents. We wanted to find revenue streams that we felt were appropriate to be able to meet the needs of this cost. So we believe, barring interest rate increases, somewhere around $9.7 million would be the annual debt payment. We've come up with a variety of revenue streams to be able to accomplish this. CCD, which is a capital fund we have, it's a fixed rate. We identified $3.5 million there on an annual basis that we feel comfortable that we could commit to this. Operational revenue, this is from OVG, a third party has evaluated how much revenue reasonably that could be dedicated to the debt payment. So you fund your operations, your operational reserves, you take care of all that, and you still, on an annual basis, on a conservative level, have about $1.7 million that you can put towards your debt payments. Yes, we are talking about food and beverage. It's something that John, we've talked about for a decade, I think. I'm grateful that we finally found an opportunity to bring food and beverage tax rate up to the same as our neighbors. But what's interesting, what's different about ours is under Indiana law, our ability to do this has to be focused on economic development, can't be used for general fund terms. And what I do like about the opportunity to do this is that I feel very confident that what we're investing in is directly supporting the restaurants in our community. So, imagine 170 nights a year where we're bringing people into our community to go to those restaurants. So there's a slide, I think, coming up that shows relative to other communities. Why don't you go to
It's
that?
already hard enough to get reservations at the restaurants.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're going to be inundated.
Yeah.
So
Really.
we had our
I was thinking
team,
the same thing.
Yeah.
we had our team look at this and research this, because I didn't know exactly the stats, but the food and beverage tax rate for central Indianapolis is at 9%, Carmel's at 9%, Nelsonville's at 9%, Greenwood is, Anderson's at 8%, Westville, Plainfield, Rhineville, Brunswick are all at 9%. We're asking, in order to fund this project, to go from 8 to 9%, which puts us in line with everybody but Anderson. Anderson's the only one we'd be out of lockstep with.
So when we go to Hamilton Town Center, we pay Noblesville.
You are already doing
You're
that.
paying the Noblesville,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
That is
When we
correct.
go south of 96th Street,
Correct.
Yeah.
if you go on the south side of the street, you're paying that
Correct.
already.
In fact, we had, believe it or not, we had a very large restaurant move to Fischer's and actually thought they were supposed to charge 9% and had to be corrected because they just thought everyone paid
Yes.
9%.
Yeah, everyone expects. I get lots of. This is probably the most common question I get from new restaurants. I actually got one. I get one probably every couple months.
Is whether there's a local.
Is there a
Yeah.
local one, and where do they have to
Yeah.
remit?
So that generates about, we think on the conservative end, about $3 million a year. Point being is that I think there's a couple key takeaways here. One, we're not raising property tax. In fact, we're actually, no.
It sounded expensive.
Oh, actually, I think our SWAT team's training in City Hall.
Oh, yeah.
So,
boy.
SWAT team's training in City Hall. I think they're doing concussion.
As long as they don't surround us.
Yeah, we're
it's
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
We're good.
You let me know though. I want to run it.
So, a couple key takeaways I think from this plan that I think are important. One, we're bringing our tax rate back down to 2020. We continue to reduce our tax rate. Two, we did not want to take any money away from the operations of our city. So we didn't want to be in a situation where we were taking money out of the general fund to pay for this facility. We know we have core operations that we have to take care of. And so we think we found enough revenue streams that are alternative that would allow us to fund this facility, develop this vision, and still be able to maintain operations and frankly not touch our cash reserves. And so that's the proposal that we're going to be bringing to the full council coming up. All three of these projects. Next slide.
Mayor, I'm sorry, what is pilot?
So pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. So when we implemented our sewer utility, when we bought the Hse Utility, one of the things that we planned for is they used to pay property taxes and now they don't. And so we allotted for that. So there's $1.5 million a year annually in our sewer utility that is a payment in lieu of taxes that comes over to the enterprise fund, city fund. And so we earmarked that and said, well, that's something that we hadn't necessarily financially planned on having 5 years ago. And now we do have that revenue stream. We feel confident that we can use that for something like this type of investment moving forward. Sorry, thank you for bringing that up. I realized I had looked over that one. But can you go to the next slide? This gives you an idea just generally of the economic impact for all of this. Again, we're talking about $1.1 billion in investment. We had an economic development consultant kind of identify what the overall economic impact is. And some of these are pretty astounding. The total construction wages per year during construction, you're looking at, if all this was being built at the same time, about $128 million of wages in that year. Generally a pretty significant increase in income tax revenue as well. And just generally, you can see the scale and magnitude of what we're contemplating. Next slide, please. I know this is hard to read, but you have the handouts. This goes to the question earlier about just kind of overall assessed value growth. We're talking about, keep in mind, investment is not assessed value. I wish it was, because when we say we're bringing $1.1 billion of investment, when the assessors go out and assess it, it doesn't assess for $1.1 billion. Good for them, not as good for us, but nonetheless. So we think it's from our financial analysts think it's about $545 million of actual assessed value. That's taxable value. And then school district, and I think, Jocelyn, you bring up a good point. We should put number of teachers funded, not salaries, because it makes it look like they're getting paid, like they get paid a lot of money. Yeah, right, yeah, right. And then the annual property tax revenue is demonstrated there as well. So there's lots to go through. Monday night, again, Stefan and Andretti are actually just kind of your traditional economic development agreements. They'll be before you at council for consideration. For vote, for those two. Those two are for vote. This yard conversation and the food and beverage tax conversation is an introduction. And under Indiana law, we have to have a specific hearing for food and beverage. So we're going to have the council meeting, then we got to have a special council meeting for just the public hearing. And then you have an October council meetings when we would bring actual items. And the only thing tonight that we would ask is that in order to start the financial process, we're asking that you support a resolution or recommend a resolution be considered at the council, just so we can start the process of the financial conversation around the yard. So that, I think, is, I don't know what item that is. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's R091922.
Aye.
I.
Do I have a motion to recommend approval to go to council Monday? Motion by Todd. Do I have a second?
Second.
Can we just, I'm not sure if I'm clear what the resolution does. And
It's starting
what-
it's starting the
The
process.
same
We're not
process
voting on
as the
anything.
city hall
Yes.
step through.
Yes.
It
So
doesn't
it's not
commit
like-
you to
yes,
any-
it's like, hey, we're ready to go. It'll be similar, like Elliot said.
We're pursuing this.
We're pursuing
Right.
this.
And
They'll be-
find a need for the, yes.
Okay.
At any
There-
point, you have the ability to vote no or pull the ripcord
Yes, it's
all the way
yes.
up until a final vote, but we got to start.
However,
somewhere.
that resolution is step one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Starting
Yeah.
the process.
Starting
Got
the
it.
process.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Motion
for
by
that
Todd,
clarification.
second by Cecilia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question
Yes.
about what is this paying for? The entire next phase?
No, just the
arena?
event center. Just the event
Just
center.
the event center.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. The private development would be built by a private investor.
Okay.
Yes.
This is just the
Yes,
event center.
exactly.
I'll just make one comment, and I know we need to wrap.
Yeah.
What we're creating here, and we already have created, actually, but this secures it, is a tourism economy, right? This is a tourism economy. And if we don't have the infrastructure in place, which means hospitality jobs, housing, roads, all that, that has to come alongside with this. So I'm not telling you something you don't know, but I'm just bringing off of Todd's point, if we don't have enough hospitality workers to fulfill the capacity that we have right now, we need to think about that, because that's how we get economic development or economic impact out of a project like this.
Well, I know
is
you-
that other local spending.
I know you spent a lot of your career in tourism,
Yeah.
so I'm sure you've seen the impacts of these types of projects, how
It's-
transformative they can be.
Transformative.
Yeah.
It's big, but it all has to be developed, right?
Has to have
All the
infrastructure.
pieces has to fit into place. And hospitality workers right now,
Hard to
and that
find.
infrastructure is tough. It's tough, so.
It's an exciting
That's another
time.
day.
Exciting challenge.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, this is, to your point, it's kind of a new area, a new economic area that we haven't really explored. So I'm kind of excited to see such a dynamic, frankly, dynamic platform of economic development projects. You have Andretti Global Racing, you have a life science company, and then you have tourism. So I just think it's really diversifying our economic base, which I think is exciting.
That's smart.
Yeah.
One quick question. I was wondering if you've done an analysis on convention potential,
So we've had,
what could come here in
Yes.
terms of convention revenue?
we've had a good conversation with Brenda Myers at the Hamilton County Visitors Bureau about this, and I think she's got a lot of ideas and a lot of passion about the potential of this project. And I think she has submitted a letter of support for the project, but I encourage all of you to talk to her, because she's got all kinds of ideas beyond what I would be able to articulate, and we can certainly invite her to have that discussion with any and all of you.
Conventions and tournaments.
Yeah,
Also too
100%.
are huge. Yeah.
And so the perform in the back lists a handful of different types of events. I'll tell you, those are rightfully so for Proforma, very, very conservative numbers and only some of the different options. So I think conventions is one of the line items listed, but There's a lot of information, so take your time to look at it and let me know
Well,
if you have
and
any
we'll-
questions whatsoever.
We'll regurgitate a lot of this on Monday with some additional information as well, and just kind of start the process.
Can you also, if I may ask, I would like to understand better the sequence of events and the process here.
Yes.
The F&B process is new to me. You guys have dabbled in it before.
It's all brand new.
But, right, like, I mean, we've dipped our toe in the water before, but I think that would be important, at least for me, and I would say citizens, to know, like, what happens next and how does
Yep.
this go down?
And I
would
think
appreciate
actually,
that.
is that a lot of that on the website, or will be on the website?
Not yet. It will be up by the morning, but I do have a visual timeline of like what exactly is
Thank
happening and
Yeah.
when.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that was a lot to cover in one.
I got that done at 6:12.
That means I got to go to soccer practice.
It's all right.
That-
Work on
I
your,
could
work
join
on your
ya.
foot skills.
We're 0-4, so.
4-year-olds need you.
Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Thanks.
Orange, yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn?
Second, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you also for this.
I know.